Hello, everyone. Alright, so I've recorded various words of this rant over the last several weeks as more information comes out, as the Trump team throws up a defense, then it collapses under the weight of either the testimony of others or the president's own statements. Uh, so bear with me, but every time for me, it comes down to this: the president is still the main line of his defense is, and the main line of his defenders uh, has generally been that there has been to narrow the focus and adjust to that call. This is specifically a Trump thing, is to narrow the focus to just what's in the call and then say it's perfect. There was no quid pro quo with the call, and I don't agree with that. But let's take that as a given, and I'm going to take that as a given, in an attempt to assess the president's statements a little more. Uh, to I really like, as a rhetorical device, the idea of taking one stance of a person's position as true, um, and then it's not quite a proof by contradiction. I'm not using some formal logic to prove that there's a contradiction in his statements. I just kind of like to go through Cloakia and say these don't add up. And so go with let's assume that the president is right in saying when he says there was no quid pro quo in the phone call, and that you just need to go to the transcript. I I can immediately just go, well, it's not a transcript. The testimony we have tells us that that those ellipses, which we keep getting told are just pauses, are not. That in fact, in several places, those ellipses are actually uh, cutting out more references to Burisma and Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden, and the idea being, well, if you kept bringing them up, you brought them up again and again and again, and you're not bringing up the Hillary Clinton 26 the email server from 2016 that somehow they haven't wiped, that proves that the Ukraine was actually the ones behind the 2016 hack. He's trying to exonerate the Russians and by proxy exonerate himself for all the obstruction he was doing. Um, which doesn't sound, and the problem is that's their big front line. That's like that's the side of the angle. They're going to be pulling out all this evidence that somehow we knew there was a corrupt action in Ukraine in 2016 around the U.S. election, and if we can prove that, I guess that has a very solid, like, I can see that being a not so much being about a direct political rival, right? Hillary Clinton isn't in the race; she's long gone. This is it's still a search for political material, but you can see this having solid. I can see this having solid value, to the national interest. If it were true. I haven't they haven't shown us any evidence that it's true, and it's in contradiction to anyone who would have that evidence. But let's go with that. Let's assume, so we can assume that if Hunter Biden got mentioned again and again, and you edited those out, it made it look like you were trying to downplay Trump's interest in Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, which was really what he wanted, and that really begins to undermine this narrative that it's not a that there's a not a quid pro quo, or b, if you're a little bit more savvy, that it's not a corrupt quid pro quo. Um, Sam Cedar was joking about the fact that Ben Shapiro moved the goalposts from quid pro quo to corrupt quid pro quo. But I think that's actually a valid, and in so much as he joked about the fact that Ben Shapiro clearly changed his position, he was right to laugh at Ben Shapiro. Specifically, Ben Shapiro was talking about not moving goalposts in regards to impeachment, and then was moving the goalposts. And in so much as that's true, he might have a point. But Ben Shapiro has latched on to the key thing, which is when the Secretary of State says, we do quid pro quos all the time, he's right. When they describe Joe Biden's going to Ukraine to get the prosecutor fired, they're right to call it quid pro quo. There is, however, a difference, and that is the corrupt intent, the idea to use your power for personal gain and not the American people. Joe Biden was going there on behalf of the foreign policy of the United States at an official visit in public, at the behest of Republican lawmakers, Democrat lawmakers, international allies. Like, everyone agreed we needed to end this. We needed this prosecutor out. And if they didn't send Joe Biden because he had, recused himself from that dealing because of the whole Burisma thing, they still would have set the next guy down to go get him. They'll send the Secretary of State to go down there and say, hey, we need you to fire the prosecutor. That is not a and then we'll give you this aid. That is not a corrupt quid pro quo. Whereas Donald Trump was doing this all through back channels, dodging the State Department, asking for help with investigations outside of the Justice Department resources, which would normally have been done to do this. Lest we forget, Rudy Giuliani has admitted they did not go through the Justice Department because it would be illegal. Because if they had gone through the Justice Department, no one would have disagreed that getting they were kind of under fire for suggesting the Justice Department investigate political rivals, and so if they had the Justice Department investigate a political rival, it might have been seen poorly. Rudy Giuliani believes it would have been illegal. So that's a serious issue there. You've already kind of just set up this weird double standard on the idea of a corrupt quid pro quo. But let's throw all that out. Let's say that Trump is right. There's no quid pro quo in the phone call, and that there's nothing more there's nothing damning in the transcript. All right. I've already said I don't believe either of those two positions, but let's, for the sake of argument, let's just agree that the phone call did not include anything that could be that is solid evidence of a quid pro quo, and that the edits made to the transcript don't make the transcript sound better for Trump. that the aides did not edit the transcript in such a way as to make it sound less corrupt. The call is not the only conversation that was had about this, um, about the demands for investigation. The call specifically, the transcript specifically notes that he was already in contact with the Ukrainian president was already in contact with Rudy, and um, that Trump wants him to talk to Rudy directly rather than through the State Department. Therefore, it's not a government communication. Therefore, it's not logged in any under the Presidential Records Act. You can see where this is going. That's like been my problem since the beginning. Is clearly they're throwing this over to Trump's supposed defense lawyer, who is not required under the law to keep a record of his communications with the Ukraine. In fact, it's kind of surprising that he's got text messages that he's showing on screen. That's a whole nother. I'm not going to get into that. So he might have. Who knows? There could have been a quid pro quo discussed directly with Rudy. Might have used those words. Guess what? The record, there's not necessarily a record of it because he's subverted government channels, which keep these records as a matter of course. And so there are a ton of other conversations. Limiting it to the transcripts, and saying we don't need witnesses because you don't need witnesses telling people what you were saying because we have the transcripts. One, belies the fact that people can speak in code, and so you want people who heard, that was your whole argument about the first, it's not a first-hand account with the whistleblower report, right? Because people who listen to the call are going to get a better impression, might actually know what was said and be able to better parse the if you heard the conversation, you can better parse it. I realize that sounds weird. I don't understand the argument because the idea is that the person who got it secondhand. But I guess the idea is the person who got it secondhand might have gotten a different impression from the summary given by first-hand accounts rather than actually having heard it. I don't see how that changes the concerns of a first-hand account. Maybe because it's a second-hand account, they might think the first-hand accounts are fake or something. They're really good about claiming that all the opponents of Donald Trump make up fake stuff, while they have literally been calling this transcript a transcript when it is a reconstructed summary with edits, witness testimony that there were edits to that. And this is like another in the long line of it's another issue entirely. Let's stay on track. So yeah, that's my big issue with my big issue with this line of defense that Trump is rolling out, that he's trying to get Republicans, on board with, and that's probably why Republicans are for a little while we're trying not, weren't on board with this conversation, and that's that when you look at Trump's statement is kind of inane. It falls apart on every level particularly when you have the witness testimony. There was no quid pro quo. Trump donor Gordon Sondland goes, yeah, we conditioned I was under the belief that the aid was conditioned upon the anti-corruption efforts, um, which happened to be, so there was a quid pro quo. Not a corrupt quid pro quo. Well, it seems like the transcript is intentionally edited to cut down on the less defensible Joe Biden inquiry, and instead giving equal time to the 2016 Russia exoneration that he also wants. But so he wanted a public statement. Uh, he wanted to have something he could bring back and throw around. It was important that he have that public statement. They needed to publicly announce they were investigating Joe Biden and the corruption and the 2016 election. Um, and so it seems like the only corruption he was interested in examining was the corruption that happened to be beneficial to him politically. And so there's a question there. And an investigation should happen. We don't need an investigation. We don't need an investigation to see what was actually said in all these 1,000 other conversations. So, there is no quid pro quo. No, there was definitely a quid pro quo. Secretary of State said it. Trump said it. Numerous officials have said, yeah, there's definitely a quid pro quo. The question is whether it was a corrupt. The question is whether this quid pro quo was for Trump's benefit or the country's benefit. And frankly, an investigation, that's actually where the corrupt quid pro quo kind of falls apart, is if you examine it in that question. The defenders like to say, look, we don't want a corrupt government that's not gonna spend this money, on U.S.-made weapons to enrich U.S. Arms manufacturers. This can't be used. We don't want them to use this elsewhere. Okay. Investigating the 2016 election, nor Hunter Biden, is going to, is a type of corruption that's going to change the spending of money. I guess that's why that talking point kind of died. The talking point connecting corrupt use of the money kind of died pretty quickly. But that was the motivation, according to the Secretary of State, is they were worried about the way the money would be spent. But none of the corruption they detailed to Ukraine, that they have detailed in public, reacts to anything with the corrupt use of military aid. And so they haven't detailed that question, which means that idea that it's connected to corruption kind of just goes to the side. It's not about it wasn't according to the Secretary of State, has clearly written to screw up everything. The Secretary of State's statements kind of throw all of that under the bus, in my opinion. But the corrupt quid pro quo, that's still the question. A corrupt use of the leveraged power, that's a separate thing. And then so you move whether this was a corrupt action. That's still up for debate. At least amongst those people who want to debate that. I don't. Then you move into and then there's the defense of it's all in the transcript. Well, the transcript is incomplete. Um, you don't need to talk to other people. Yes, we do. One of the big things about a corrupt quid pro quo is how this comes out. Um, when Let me back up. So the question, it's all in the transcript. Well, no, it isn't. You have a small you've edited this transcript as your administration has done multiple times, uh, where where we have the footage. This is a live. This is a recorded tape brief. This is a question and answer in the Oval Office with reporters present, all recording what was happening, and they edited out, things that were small things that were unflattering to the president. Now, in these cases, a lot of them didn't matter, but when they put out a transcript of that meeting, they would edit the transcript. They would edit out side remarks that Trump would make. This is something this administration does. So the idea that, oh no, we edited things, you know, we edited things, but it wasn't in the president's favor that we made these edits. That's what the administration makes, edits in the president's favor to make things, you know, make him seem less snide, make him seem more presidential and together. Um, And here we've heard that what they edited out were numerous references to Hunter Biden and Burisma, which uh, can change the tone of that transcript. We've long noted that this didn't seem to be a 45-minute phone call, or however long it was supposed to be. This transcript really didn't seem to fill that amount of time. I was skeptical. There were definitely going to be. I think a lot of people weren't factoring in how slow Trump talks when he's not on his uppers, and um, I mean, trained transcriptionists often have to put in unintelligible in a conversation in a transcript of Trump because he has no diction in his words. He is no longer, if he was once capable of having strong diction, he no longer has strong diction. Um, and so, um, I imagine a translator is going to have a fucking hell of a time translating Trump, uh, particularly in this kind of, somber setting. Um, now, but we do know there are chunks of this conversation that no longer are part of that are not part of this transcript. They never were. Um, Vindman, Vindman is a never Trumper. Show me the evidence. I mean, you asserted the whistleblower. You didn't know who he was, but he had to be a partisan hack because he reported on the fact. It's amazing how many Trump picks were partisan Democratic hacks. Were Democrat hacks that were partisan never Trumpers that Trump put into office and that accepted job offers from Trump. It's kind of astounding the number. Like, there apparently a never Trumper donated $1 million to Trump's campaign to get a ambassadorship to the EU. Um, and so, I mean, it's the lines of defense are just ridiculous. There's not a single line of it that really withstands solid scrutiny. Like, we can't restrict ourselves to the transcript. There were other conversations. If I say, if I have a transcript with a friend, and I say, hey, you know, yeah, no, I was fine giving you that money. That was. I'm glad you got the money. I'm glad you're getting good use of it. I hear you need some more. Don't worry. Um, I'm gonna need. I'd really like you to look in a few things for me though. Already that sounds like a good proposal. Let's ignore that for a second. And then I say, I need you to go talk to my brother. And I'm taking on I don't know, some weird amalgamation accent that's supposed to be mob, I guess. I didn't do that intentionally. I need you to go see me. So I go, if I tell this guy who I've given money to before, I'm gonna give money to him again. Um, I need you to talk to my brother. I need you to go to my brother and talk to him. He knows he knows what I need from you. And I want you, he knows what I want from you. I want you to go talk to my brother. He knows what I want from you. Anyone looking into, you know, is there some criminal action going on, is going to immediately want to talk to my brother and see those conversations between my brother and this guy I've been giving money to. Because if this guy I was giving money to, who knows what I'm going to do? Who knows? It might be my brother is going to detail a criminal act that ostensibly I want him to perform, and so we need to look at my brother and we need to find out what my brother said, and then we need to come back to me and say, hey, did you tell your brother to say this? If there was a criminal act there. By the way, Giuliani's associates are in jail for a criminal act, doing not what the impeachment said, but there's a lot of question there now. Just because you do it through a third party doesn't mean you didn't commit a crime. If you direct someone to commit a crime, and they commit a crime, you are, involved in that crime. Um, uh, and so that's yeah. The defense is just ridiculous. We need to talk to other people because there was more than just the transcript isn't complete, and B, there were more conversations than just the one conversation included in the transcript. That's my rant. Yeah, this is a shit show.